The soft hum of my Tesla faded into the background as I pulled into the driveway of our sprawling suburban home. Home sweet home, I thought to myself, feeling a mix of comfort and unease. The perfectly manicured lawns and pristine facades of the neighboring houses seemed to taunt me with their flawless appearances. If only they could glimpse the truth hidden beneath the surface of my seemingly perfect life. I, Michael Davis, a successful entrepreneur and respected member of the community, was on the brink of a revelation that would shake my world to its core. But at that moment, I remained blissfully unaware. As I stepped out of the car, my briefcase in hand, an unsettling feeling lingered in the pit of my stomach. My business trip had wrapped up sooner than planned, and I was eager to surprise Sophia, my wife of a decade. Lately, however, there had been a noticeable distance between us. Her smiles didn't reach her eyes, and her touch felt less warm than it used to. I attributed it to the stress of managing the finances of my rapidly growing business. It was no easy feat yet. Beneath that logical reasoning, a gnawing suspicion began to take root in my mind. Upon entering our home, the silence enveloped me, broken only by the soft click of the door shutting behind me. "Sophia," I called out, my voice echoing in the spacious foyer. No answer. As I made my way toward the kitchen, I was startled by a sudden flurry of movement coming from upstairs. Moments later, Sophia appeared at the top of the staircase, her chestnut hair slightly disheveled and her cheeks flushed with color. "Michael, you're home early," she exclaimed, her voice a pitch higher than usual. Her eyes darted nervously around the room before finally settling on me, sporting a forced smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. I raised an eyebrow, sensing something was off. "Thought I'd surprise you. Everything okay?" I inquired, my voice steady. "Of course," she replied, a little too quickly for my comfort. "I was just tidying up. You know how I like everything to be perfect when you get home." I nodded slowly, observing her as she descended the stairs with an exaggerated nonchalance. Something was definitely amiss. Sophia had never been good at hiding her feelings. It was a trait I had always admired, until now. "I need to run a quick errand," she said abruptly, snatching her purse from the side table. "We're out of milk. I'll be back in a jiffy." Before I could respond, she was out the door, leaving behind only the lingering scent of her perfume and the echo of her heels against the marble floor. I stood there for a moment, trying to process what had just happened. In 10 years of marriage, I had never heard her use the word jiffy. It was such a trivial detail, yet it sent alarm bells ringing in my mind. Climbing the stairs to our bedroom, I found the room in disarray, a stark contrast to Sophia's usual fastidious nature. The bed was hastily made, and a drawer in her dresser stood ajar. My eyes narrowed as I took in the chaotic scene. I'm not proud of what I did next, but an overwhelming urge compelled me to dig deeper. Call it intuition or paranoia, but I couldn't shake the feeling that something significant was being hidden from me. I opened Sophia's dresser drawer and began rifling through her belongings, guilt gnawing at me yet overshadowed by an undeniable determination. Everything appeared to be in its place, until my fingers brushed against something crumpled at the back. Pulling it out, I realized I held a small, wrinkled piece of paper. As I unfolded it, a chill coursed through me. The words, scrawled in an unfamiliar hand, burned into my consciousness: "Can't wait to feel you inside me tonight. My pathetic husband will never suspect a thing." My world tilted on its axis as the weight of those words sank in. Sophia, my wife, the woman with whom I had built my life, was cheating on me. Not just that, she was relishing it, mocking me from behind my back. A storm of emotions surged within me: hurt, betrayal, and seething anger. Yet amidst that turmoil, a single feeling rose above all: cold, calculated fury. I am not a man who takes betrayal lightly. Sophia had made her choice, and now she would have to face the consequences. I heard the front door open, signaling her return. Taking a deep breath, I steeled myself for the confrontation that lay ahead. I may have been blindsided, but I was far from defeated. If Sophia thought she could play me for a fool, she was about to discover just how wrong she was. Descending the stairs, note clutched tightly in my hand, I found Sophia placing a carton of milk into the fridge. She turned, a forced smile spreading across her face. "See? Told you I'd be quick." I remained silent, simply holding up the crumpled note. The color drained from her face as recognition dawned in her eyes. "Michael, I can explain," she stammered, but I interrupted her. "Can you?" My voice was calm, even as a tempest of emotions churned beneath the surface. "Please, Sophia, enlighten me. Explain how my wife, the woman I trusted with everything, could betray me like this." For a fleeting moment, she appeared as though she might try to deny it, to conjure some elaborate excuse. But to my shock, she laughed, a cruel, mocking sound that echoed through the kitchen. "Oh, Michael," she sneered, her mask of innocence slipping away completely. "You want an explanation? Fine. You're boring. Predictable. At least he knows how to use his tongue in bed." Her words stung like a slap to the face, yet I refused to show any sign of weakness. Instead, I held her gaze, my jaw clenched tight. "Who is he?" I demanded, my voice low and steady, masking the rage boiling just beneath the surface. As if summoned by my fury, the front door swung open, and in walked a man with a suitcase in hand and a cocky grin plastered across his face. He was younger than I was, his slick back hair and flashy watch screaming, "New money." "Ready for round two, baby," he called out, only to stop short when he noticed me. His smirk widened, revealing a mixture of arrogance and amusement. "Well, you must be the pathetic husband." It took only a moment for recognition to strike me, Ryan Miller, a name I had overheard during some of Sophia's work events. So this was the man she had chosen to betray me with. Sophia sauntered over to him, wrapping herself around him like a vine, and my stomach churned at the sight. I kept my expression neutral, though inside, a storm was brewing. "Ryan's moving in," Sophia announced, her tone dripping with disdain. "And since the house is in my name, you need to leave." I stood frozen, absorbing the full weight of their betrayal. Not only had Sophia cheated, but she was also kicking me out of the home I had tirelessly worked to provide for us. "Oh, and Michael," Sophia added, her voice sickly sweet. "I'll be taking half of everything in the divorce. I've already contacted my lawyer." For a moment, silence enveloped the room as I took in her words. I could see the anticipation in their eyes, waiting for me to crumble, to beg for mercy, to show some sign of the devastation they had wrought. But I am Michael Davis, I don't break, I rebuild. When necessary, I destroy. "Very well," I said, my voice steady despite the chaos within me. "I'll gather my things." As I turned to head upstairs, I caught a glimpse of confusion flicker in Sophia's eyes. She had expected a fight, tears, anything but this calm acceptance. Little did she know that the battle was just beginning. In our bedroom, soon to be Sophia's alone, I packed a bag with mechanical efficiency. My mind raced, formulating plans and considering angles. Sophia and her boy toy thought they had won, but they had no idea what was coming. As I descended the stairs, bag in hand, I paused to look at them one last time. Sophia, draped over Ryan, both of them wearing triumphant smirks. They thought they had broken me, but in reality, they had only awakened a sleeping giant. "Enjoy your victory," I said, my voice laced with quiet menace. "While it lasts." With that, I stepped out the door, leaving behind the life I had known. But I wasn't defeated, far from it. As I drove away, anger simmered within me. Sophia and Ryan had made a grave mistake, and I would ensure they regretted it for the rest of their lives. The sterile anonymity of the hotel room suited my mood as I paced back and forth, my mind a whirlwind of thoughts and plans. The initial shock of Sophia's betrayal had faded, replaced by a burning anger that fueled every move I made. I am not a man who takes betrayal lightly, and I had no intention of letting Sophia and Ryan walk away unscathed. Standing by the window, gazing out at the twinkling city lights, I knew what I had to do. It was time to dig deeper, to uncover every secret and every lie. Sophia and Ryan thought they had outsmarted me, but they were about to learn just how wrong they were. I pulled out my phone and dialed a number I hadn't used in years. After a few rings, a gruff voice answered. Sam Parker speaking. Sam, it's Michael Davis, I replied, my voice steady. I need your services. There was a brief pause on the other end. Sam and I had history. He had helped me out of a few tight spots in my early business days. If anyone could uncover the truth, it was him. Michael, it's been a while. What's the situation? He asked. I gave him a quick rundown of the events, keeping my emotions firmly in check. Sam listened without interruption, and I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. So you want me to follow them? Gather intel, he confirmed once I finished. Exactly, I replied. I need to know everything, their routines, their contacts, any skeletons in their closets. Leave no stone unturned. Sam chuckled darkly. You got it, boss. I'll start right away. As I hung up, a smile crept across my lips. Sophia and Ryan's days of sneaking around were numbered. Soon, I would have all the ammunition I needed to bring their world crashing down around them. The next few days blurred into a whirlwind of meetings with lawyers and damage control at my company. I played the part of the wronged husband to perfection, eliciting sympathy from business partners and employees alike. Little did they know that behind my stoic facade, I was orchestrating Sophia and Ryan's downfall. On the fourth day, I received a call from Sam. Michael, you're going to want to hear this, he said, his voice taut with excitement. We met in a quiet corner of a nondescript cafe. Sam slid a folder across the table, his eyes darting around to ensure we weren't being watched. What you're about to see isn't pretty, he warned. I opened the folder, my eyes widening as I absorbed the contents. Bank statements, transaction records, emails, everything pointed to a massive fraud operation. They've been siphoning money from your business for months, Sam explained in a low voice. Sophia used her position as your accountant to create fake invoices, transferring funds to offshore accounts. And Ryan? He's a known con artist with a rap sheet a mile long. He's been using Sophia to get to your money. The realization crashed over me like a wave, knocking the wind from my lungs. This was no longer just about an affair, it was about greed, plain and simple. Sophia and Ryan had been playing me for a fool, exploiting my trust to line their own pockets. For a brief moment, I felt a twinge of regret, sadness for what could have been, but I quickly pushed it aside. Now was not the time for sentimentality. Now was the time for action. Good work, Sam, I said, my voice icy and resolute. Keep digging. I want to know every detail of their operation. As I left the cafe, my mind was already racing, formulating the next phase of my plan. Sophia and Ryan thought they had won, but their victory was about to turn to ashes in their mouths. I reached out to Sophia, crafting a carefully worded message that hinted at reconciliation. I played the part of the heartbroken husband, willing to forgive if only we could talk things through. It was a performance worthy of an Oscar, and Sophia fell for it hook, line, and sinker. We agreed to meet at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant where we had once celebrated our anniversary. As I waited for her arrival, I steeled myself for what was to come. This meeting wasn't about reconciliation, it was about setting the stage for my revenge. When Sophia walked in, her confident stride faltered slightly at the sight of me. She slid into the seat across from me, her eyes wary. Michael, I'm surprised you wanted to meet, she said, her tone careful, as if she were testing the waters. I forced a sad smile onto my face. I've been doing a lot of thinking, Sophia, about us, about what went wrong. I thought maybe we could talk about it, try to part ways amicably. I noticed the glint of triumph in her eyes, quickly masked by a facade of sympathy. She believed she had me right where she wanted me, broken and desperate to salvage something from the wreckage of our marriage. "Oh, Michael," she sighed, reaching across the table to pat my hand condescendingly. "I think that's for the best. A clean break, you know, for both of us." I nodded, playing along, but my mind was racing. I was thinking maybe we could simplify things. I'm willing to let go of some assets if it means we can avoid a long, messy divorce. Sophia's eyes lit up at the mention of assets. She practically salivated at the thought of getting her hands on more of my money. "That's very generous of you, Michael," she replied, struggling to keep the eagerness out of her voice. "I think we can definitely work something out." We spent the next hour discussing terms, and I watched as Sophia grew more confident with each passing minute. She had no idea that every concession I made was a carefully laid trap, each agreement a noose tightening around her neck. By the end of our meeting, Sophia had signed the preliminary divorce papers, thinking she had secured a favorable deal. What she didn't realize was that hidden within the legalese were clauses that would come back to haunt her, clauses that would give me the upper hand when the time came. As we parted ways, Sophia looked smug, assured of her victory. I allowed myself a small smile as I watched her walk away, completely unaware of the storm that was brewing. Back in my hotel room, I called my lawyer, Amanda Brooks. "It's done," I told her. She signed the papers. "Excellent," Amanda replied. "And she didn't suspect anything?" "Not a thing," I confirmed. "She thinks she's got me cornered." "Perfect. I'll start filing the paperwork. By the time she realizes what's happening, it'll be too late." As I hung up, a sense of satisfaction washed over me. The pieces were falling into place. Sophia and Ryan had started this game, but I was the one who would finish it. They were about to learn a harsh lesson: never underestimate Michael Davis. The deception had begun, and there was no turning back now. Sophia and Ryan's days of luxury and laughter at my expense were numbered. Soon, very soon, they would understand the true meaning of loss, and I would be there to watch their world crumble, piece by carefully orchestrated piece. The next morning, I met with Amanda Brooks in her sleek, modern office. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the city skyline, a stark reminder of the heights from which Sophia and Ryan were about to fall. "Michael," Amanda greeted me, her sharp eyes assessing my determined expression. "Once we set this in motion, there's no going back." I met her gaze unflinchingly. "I've never been more certain of anything in my life, Amanda. They chose to play this game. Now they'll learn what it means to play against me." She nodded, a small smile playing on her lips. "Very well. Let's go over the plan one more time." For the next hour, we meticulously reviewed every detail of our strategy. It was a complex web of legal maneuvers, financial traps, and calculated revelations, all designed to bring Sophia and Ryan's world crashing down around them. "What about the fake business partner?" I asked, referring to a key component of our plan. Amanda's smile widened. "Sam is taking care of that as we speak. He's got an actor friend who's perfect for the role. Ryan won't know what hit him." As I left Amanda's office, a surge of anticipation coursed through me. The first domino was about to fall, and I couldn't wait to witness the cascade of destruction that would follow. Over the next few days, I immersed myself in work, maintaining the facade of a man trying to move on from a painful divorce. All the while, Sam and his team were meticulously setting the stage for Ryan's downfall. The trap was sprung on a sunny Thursday afternoon. I watched from a discreet distance as Ryan swaggered into an upscale restaurant, his cocky grin firmly in place. He had no idea he was walking into a carefully orchestrated performance. Sam's actor friend, posing as a wealthy investor named Marcus Blackwood, was already seated at a corner table. I had to admit, Sam had outdone himself. Marcus looked every bit the successful businessman, from his tailored suit to his air of casual confidence. As Ryan approached the table, I activated the hidden microphone we'd planted. Their voices came through crystal clear in my earpiece. "Mr. Grant, it's a pleasure to finally meet you in person," Marcus greeted Ryan warmly. "Likewise," Ryan replied, oozing charm. "I have a feeling this is the beginning of a very profitable relationship." I smirked to myself. Ryan had no idea how right he was, just not in the way he imagined. Over the next hour, I listened intently as Ryan fell deeper and deeper into our trap. Marcus expertly led the conversation, dropping hints about lucrative investment opportunities and insider information. Ryan, ever the opportunist, took the bait, hook, line, and sinker. "You know," Ryan said, lowering his voice conspiratorially, "I've got access to some pretty valuable assets myself. My girlfriend, well, soon-to-be wife, she's been helping me acquire some interesting financial holdings." My fists clenched at the mention of Sophia, but I forced myself to stay focused. "Oh, do tell," Marcus replied, feigning interest. And tell he did. Drunk on the prospect of even greater wealth, Ryan spilled everything: how he and Sophia had been siphoning money from my business, how they planned to bleed me dry in the divorce, and how they'd fooled me for months. "That pathetic idiot never suspected a thing," Ryan laughed. "By the time he figures it out, we'll be long gone with everything he's worked for." Every word was being recorded, every incriminating detail was captured for posterity. As I listened, my resolve strengthened even further. Ryan and Sophia hadn't just betrayed me, they had turned it into a game, laughing at my expense. Well, now the game was changing, and I was holding all the cards. As the meeting wrapped up, Marcus promised to be in touch about their partnership. Ryan left the restaurant practically glowing with self-satisfaction, completely oblivious to the fact that he had just handed me everything I needed to destroy him. I met Sam at our predetermined rendezvous point, a quiet park a few blocks away. He handed me a flash drive containing the full recording. "You got everything?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sam nodded, a smile on his face. "Every damn word. That recording's as damning as it gets, boss." Ryan handed himself to us on a silver platter. I pocketed the flash drive, already plotting our next move. "Excellent work, Sam. Now for Phase 2. Phase 2 was perhaps the most audacious part of our plan. With Sam's help, we created a trail of fake evidence suggesting that Sophia had been embezzling far more money than she actually had. This evidence, carefully crafted to withstand scrutiny, was anonymously sent to the police. It was a calculated risk. By involving law enforcement, we were significantly upping the stakes. But I knew Sophia and Ryan, once they realized they were under investigation, they'd turn on each other like rats in a sinking ship. Sure enough, within days of the evidence being discovered, all hell broke loose. Sophia and Ryan's accounts were frozen, and their assets were seized pending investigation. I watched from afar as their perfect world began to crumble. Through my network of contacts, I heard whispers of their growing panic. Sophia was apparently furious, accusing Ryan of being careless and drawing attention to their scheme. Ryan, in turn, blamed Sophia for being greedy in taking more than they could safely hide. It was all going exactly according to plan. As I sat in my hotel room that night, reviewing the day's developments, I felt a momentary pang of something, not quite regret, but perhaps a twinge of melancholy for what could have been. Sophia and I had shared a life. After all, there had been good times, moments of genuine happiness. But then I remembered the cruel laughter in her voice when she mocked me, the disdain in her eyes as she kicked me out of my own home, and the callous way she and Ryan had plotted to strip me of everything I'd worked for. No, there was no room for sentimentality. Sophia and Ryan had made their choices, and now they would face the consequences. I pulled out my phone and dialed Amanda's number. "Everything's proceeding as planned," I told her when she answered. "Are we ready for the next phase?" "Absolutely," Amanda replied, her voice brimming with professional satisfaction. "The divorce proceedings are about to get very interesting for Sophia. And with the evidence we've gathered, Ryan is looking at some serious criminal charges. Good, I said, my voice hard. Push forward on all fronts. I want them to feel the ground crumbling beneath their feet. As I ended the call, I walked to the window, looking out at the glittering city lights. Somewhere out there, Sophia and Ryan were frantically trying to salvage their plans, their dreams of easy wealth evaporating like mist in the morning sun. Let them panic, I thought. Let them feel the fear, the desperation, the helplessness. It's only the beginning. For a moment, standing there in the quiet of my room, I allowed myself a small smile. The game was far from over, but the first round had decidedly gone my way. Sophia and Ryan had thought me a fool, an easy mark for their schemes. They were about to learn just how wrong they were. I turned away from the window. There would be no mercy, no last-minute pardons. They had chosen to go to war with me, and I intended to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. The deception had begun, and there was no turning back now. Sophia and Ryan's carefully constructed house of cards was about to come crashing down, and I would be there to witness every moment of their fall. Let them come, I thought. I'm ready for whatever they throw at me, because in the end, they'll learn the hard way. You don't cross Michael Davis and walk away unscathed. I stood at the window of my penthouse office, looking out over the city I had helped build. The last few weeks had been a whirlwind of legal maneuvers and carefully orchestrated chaos. Sophia and Ryan's world was crumbling, just as I'd planned. But I knew better than to underestimate them. They had proven themselves to be ruthless and cunning. I was prepared for their counterattack. My phone buzzed. It was Sam. "Boss, we've got movement," he said without preamble. "Sophia has reached out to her brother, Victor Palmer." I raised an eyebrow. Victor Palmer was a name I knew well, a lawyer with a reputation for dancing on the edge of legality. If Sophia was desperate enough to contact her estranged brother, she must be feeling the pressure. "Interesting," I replied. "Keep tabs on their communication. I want to know every move they make." As I ended the call, I couldn't help but smile. Let them scramble, let them grasp at straws. In the end, it would only make their fall more satisfying. Over the next few days, Sam kept me updated on Sophia and Victor's interactions. It was clear they were plotting something, but the details remained elusive. I didn't mind, I had anticipated this. In fact, I was counting on it. It was Amanda who brought me the first concrete news of their plan. "Jonathan," she said, striding into my office with a grim expression, "we've got a problem. Sophia is filing a countersuit." I leaned back in my chair, gesturing for her to continue. "She's suing you for emotional distress and slander," Amanda explained. "They're claiming the embezzlement evidence was fabricated and has damaged their reputation." I couldn't help but chuckle. The irony was delicious. They were accusing me of the very thing they'd done themselves. "Let them file," I said calmly. "We both know the truth. Their lies won't stand up to scrutiny." Amanda nodded, but I could see the concern in her eyes. "There's more," she added hesitantly. "Victor has advised Sophia to, well, dig up dirt on you, anything she can use to pressure you into a quick settlement." I felt a flicker of anger, quickly suppressed. Of course, Sophia would stoop to such tactics. She had already proven there were no depths to which she wouldn't sink. "Let her try," I said, my voice hard. "I have nothing to hide, and every skeleton she drags out of my closet will be matched by a mountain of evidence against her." As Amanda left to prepare our response, I turned back to the window. The city stretched out before me, a testament to everything I had built, everything Sophia and Ryan had tried to take from me. I'd be damned if I'd let them succeed now. The next day, the other shoe dropped. My phone exploded with notifications, missed calls, text messages, news alerts. I didn't need to read them to know what had happened. Sophia had made her move. I turned on the TV, unsurprised to see Sophia's face plastered across the screen. She looked haggard, her eyes red-rimmed as if she had been crying. It was a masterful performance. Years of abuse and manipulation. Sophia's voice trembled as she spoke to the reporters. Michael Davis may present himself as a pillar of the community, but behind closed doors, he's a monster. I lived in fear for years, afraid to speak out, but I can't stay silent any longer. I watched passively as she spun her web of lies, weaving tales of violence, emotional abuse, and controlling behavior. Each word was carefully calculated to paint me as the villain, to turn public opinion against me. As the press conference concluded, my phone rang. It was Amanda. "Michael, this is bad," she said without preamble. "These accusations are going to do serious damage to your reputation. We need to respond quickly." "Agreed," I replied, my mind already racing with possibilities. "Set up a press conference for tomorrow morning and get me everything we have on Sophia and Ryan's financials. It's time to go on the offensive." I spent the rest of the day in meetings coordinating our response. My PR team worked tirelessly to craft a statement that would counter Sophia's lies without making me appear defensive. Meanwhile, I pored over the financial records Sam had uncovered, searching for the perfect piece of evidence to turn the tables. As night fell, I received another call from Sam. "Boss, you need to see this," he said, his voice tight. "I'm sending you a video file now." I opened the file on my computer, and my eyes widened. It was security camera footage from one of my office buildings, timestamped just a few days prior. In the video, I watched as Sophia slipped into an empty conference room, followed moments later by Ryan. They embraced passionately, clearly unaware they were being recorded. "This is perfect," I said, a smile spreading across my face. "Good work, Sam. Make sure this finds its way to the media after our press conference tomorrow." The next morning, I stood before a sea of flashing cameras and shouting reporters. I had chosen my suit carefully, dark, conservative, the picture of respectability. As the room quieted, I began to speak. "Good morning," I said, my voice steady and confident. "I'm here today to address the baseless and frankly disgusting accusations made against me by my soon-to-be ex-wife, Sophia Davis." I paused, letting my gaze sweep across the assembled journalists. "Let me be clear. Every word Sophia spoke yesterday was a lie. Not only have I never abused her, but I have evidence that she and her lover, Ryan Grant, have been engaged in a systematic campaign to defraud me and my company." A murmur rippled through the crowd. I pressed on. "I have here," I said, holding up a flash drive, irrefutable proof of their embezzlement scheme, bank records, forged documents, and even a recorded confession from Mr. Grant himself. The room erupted into chaos as reporters shouted questions. I held up a hand for silence, but perhaps most damning is this. I continued, nodding to an aide who started a video on the large screen behind me. The footage of Sophia and Ryan's clandestine meeting played for all to see. As it ended, I turned back to the crowd. This was recorded just days ago, well after Sophia claims to have left me due to abuse. I think it paints a rather different picture than the one she presented yesterday. I could see the shock and excitement on the faces of the journalists. They knew they had a bombshell story on their hands. I will be filing a defamation lawsuit against Sophia Davis and Ryan Grant, I concluded, and I call on the authorities to thoroughly investigate their financial crimes. Thank you. As I left the podium, ignoring the shouted questions, I felt a surge of satisfaction. Sophia had tried to destroy me with her lies. Instead, she had given me the perfect opportunity to expose her true nature to the world. The fallout was immediate and intense. Within hours, the narrative had shifted. Sophia was no longer seen as a sympathetic victim but as a conniving liar. Ryan's reputation, already shaky, was in tatters. And I was being hailed as the wronged party, the victim of a vicious scheme who had the strength to fight back. As I sat in my office that evening, watching the news coverage of the day's events, I allowed myself a small smile. The battle was far from over, but I'd won this round decisively. Sophia and Ryan had tried to play in the big leagues, and they were learning the hard way that they were outmatched. My phone buzzed with a text from Amanda. Brilliant performance today. Sophia and Ryan are reeling. What's our next move? I thought for a moment before replying. We press our advantage. No mercy. As I set the phone down, I turned to look out at the city lights. Sophia and Ryan had started this war, but I intended to finish it. And when the dust settled, they would understand the full cost of crossing Michael Davis. The days following the press conference were a blur of activity. My legal team, led by Amanda, worked tirelessly to press our advantage in court. Meanwhile, my PR team kept the story in the news cycle, ensuring that public opinion remained firmly on my side. I was in the middle of a strategy meeting when my phone buzzed with an unknown number. Normally, I would have ignored such calls, but something compelled me to step out and answer it. Mr. Davis, a hesitant female voice came through the line. My name is Emily Drake. I used to date Ryan Grant. My interest piqued immediately. Ms. Drake, I replied, keeping my tone neutral. What can I do for you? There was a pause before Emily spoke again, her voice stronger now. I have information about Ryan, information that could help your case against him and Sophia. I listened intently as Emily poured out her story. She had been with Ryan for years before he met Sophia, painting a picture of a man consumed by greed, always searching for the next big score. Ryan had used her, drained her finances, and discarded her when he found a more lucrative target in Sophia. I want to help, Emily concluded. I want to testify against Ryan. He needs to pay for what he's done. I considered her offer carefully. On the surface, it seemed almost too good to be true. But if Emily's story checked out, her testimony could be the final nail in Ryan's coffin. I appreciate your offer, Ms. Drake, I said finally. I'll have my team look into your claims. If everything checks out, we'll be in touch about your testimony. As soon as the call ended, I put Sam on the task of verifying Emily's story. Within days, he returned with a thick file of evidence corroborating everything she'd told me. She's the real deal, boss, Sam said, handing over the file. Bank records show Ryan bleeding her dry, police reports of domestic disturbances, even some emails where Ryan brags about his cons to a buddy. I nodded, a plan already forming in my mind. Set up a meeting, I told Sam. I want to talk to Emily in person. The meeting took place in a private room at an upscale restaurant. Emily Drake was a striking woman, her sharp eyes speaking of intelligence and a hard-won wariness. As we talked, I could see the pain and anger that drove her. She wasn't just looking for revenge, she wanted justice. I know what it's like, she said at one point, her voice tight with emotion. To trust someone completely, only to have them betray you. To realize that everything you thought you knew was a lie. I felt a flicker of kinship with her then. We'd both been burned by people we trusted, but while Emily had been left broken, I had grown stronger. Perhaps, I thought, I could help her do the same. Emily, I said, leaning forward, your testimony could be crucial in bringing Ryan and Sophia to justice, but I want you to be sure, once we go down this road, there's no turning back. She met my gaze unflinchingly. I'm sure, Mr. Davis. I want Ryan to pay for what he's done, to me, to you, to everyone he's ever conned. I nodded, satisfied. Then let's begin. Over the next few weeks, my legal team worked closely with Emily, preparing her testimony. Her insider knowledge of Ryan's methods and past cons was invaluable. With her help, we uncovered even more evidence of Ryan and Sophia's crimes. But just as things seemed to be going our way, a new complication arose. Amanda received a call from Victor Palmer, Sophia's brother. He wants to make a deal, Amanda told me, her voice tense. He says if we drop the charges, Sophia and Ryan will leave the country and never bother you again. I laughed humorlessly. And why would we agree to that when we have them on the ropes? Amanda hesitated. He hinted that they might have some damaging information about you, something that could hurt your reputation if it came to light. For a moment, I felt a flicker of concern, but then I remembered who I was dealing with. Sophia and Ryan were desperate. This was nothing more than a bluff, a last-ditch effort to escape the consequences of their actions. Set up a meeting, I told Amanda. Let's hear what they have to say. The meeting was set for a neutral location, a conference room in a downtown hotel. I arrived early, making sure everything was in place for what I had planned. Victor arrived first, looking every inch the slick lawyer in his expensive suit. Sophia and Ryan followed, both trying to appear confident but unable to hide the desperation in their eyes. Jonathan, Victor began smoothly. I'm glad we could meet like this. I think we can come to an arrangement that benefits everyone. I leaned back in my chair, the picture of relaxed confidence. I'm listening. Victor laid out his proposal: drop all charges, agree to a quick and quiet divorce, and Sophia and Ryan would disappear from my life forever. In return, they would keep quiet about certain indiscretions they claimed to have evidence of. I let him finish, then smiled, a smile that was anything but pleasant. That's an interesting offer, Victor, but I'm afraid I have a counteroffer. I pressed a button on my phone, and suddenly, the room was filled with Victor's voice. Just need to find something, anything we can use against him. Doesn't matter if it's true, we just need to make it believable. The color drained from Victor's face as he realized what he was hearing. It was a recording of him planning this very meeting, discussing how to bluff their way out of trouble. You see, I said calmly, I've learned to be very careful about who I trust, and I've become quite good at anticipating my opponent's moves. I turned to Sophia and Ryan, who were looking increasingly panicked. Here's my offer: you drop this ridiculous charade, plead guilty to the charges against you, and I'll recommend leniency in sentencing. Otherwise, I'll add attempted blackmail to the list of charges. Your choice. The room was silent for a long moment. Then Sophia burst into tears, while Ryan began shouting accusations and threats. Victor just slumped in his chair, defeated. As security escorted them out, I felt no satisfaction, no joy in their despair, only a sense of justice being served. They had tried to destroy me, to take everything I'd worked for. Their tears meant nothing to me now. I turned to Amanda, who had watched the whole scene unfold. Prepare the paperwork. It's time to end this. As I left the conference room, I knew the end was in sight. Sophia and Ryan's last desperate gambit had failed. Now, all that remained was to see justice done in court. I stepped out into the sunlight, feeling the weight of the past few months lifting from my shoulders. The road ahead was still long, but for the first time in a long time, I felt truly free, free from betrayal, free from lies, free to rebuild my life on my own terms. Sophia and Ryan had thought they could break me. Instead, they'd only made me stronger. And now, they would face the consequences of their actions, not with anger or vengeance, but with the cold, implacable force of justice. As I drove back to my office, I allowed myself a small smile. The game was almost over, and I had won. Not just for myself, but for every person who'd ever been betrayed or taken advantage of. Sophia and Ryan's downfall would serve as a warning to others who might think to follow in their footsteps. The courtroom was a battlefield, and I was a general surveying the final maneuvers before the decisive clash. Sophia and Ryan sat at the defendant's table, their once confident demeanors now reduced to nervous glances and fidgeting hands. Their lawyer, a public defender who'd drawn the short straw in replacing Victor, looked overwhelmed by the mountain of evidence against his clients. I sat behind the prosecution, my face a mask of calm determination. Beside me, Emily Drake radiated a quiet strength. Her testimony had been a turning point in the trial, laying bare Ryan's history of fraud and manipulation. Now, we were in the final stages, waiting for the closing arguments that would seal Sophia and Ryan's fate. As the prosecutor stood to deliver his final address to the jury, I caught a flicker of movement from the defendant's table. Ryan leaned over to whisper something in Sophia's ear. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, I saw a flash of the old Sophia, calculating, cunning, always looking for an angle. I made a mental note to have Sam look into it. With these two, I had learned to expect the unexpected. The day wore on, a parade of final witnesses and expert testimonies. As the judge called for a recess before the closing arguments, I stepped out of the courtroom to clear my head. That's when I overheard a heated conversation from around the corner. We can't just sit here and let them railroad us, Ryan's voice was tight with desperation. We need to get out of here, start over somewhere else. And how do you propose we do that? Sophia hissed back. All our accounts are frozen. We're under constant surveillance. Face it, Ryan, it's over. There was a pause, and then Ryan's voice dropped to a whisper. Not everything is frozen. I've got a stash, a backup plan. Enough to get us out of the country, start fresh. I strained to hear Sophia's response, but at that moment, a group of reporters walked by, forcing me to move away. As I headed back to the courtroom, my mind raced. A hidden stash of money? It seemed Ryan had been even more calculating than we'd realized. I immediately texted Sam, instructing him to dig deeper into Ryan's finances and alert the authorities about a potential flight risk. Then I composed myself and re-entered the courtroom, not letting on that I'd overheard anything. The closing arguments were a formality at this point. The prosecution's case was airtight, bolstered by Emily's testimony and the mountain of financial evidence we'd uncovered. As the jury filed out to begin deliberations, I could see defeat written on Sophia and Ryan's faces. But I knew better than to underestimate them. They'd proven time and time again that they were willing to go to any lengths to save themselves. I needed to be prepared for one last desperate move. My instincts proved correct. That evening, as I was working late in my office, I received an urgent call from Sam. Boss, we've got movement, Sam said, his voice tense. Our surveillance picked up Ryan making some calls. It looks like he's trying to arrange transport out of the country. A surge of cold anger washed over me. Even now, facing certain conviction, Ryan was trying to slither away from justice. Do we know where they're planning to go? I asked. Not yet, Sam replied. But we're monitoring all ports and airports. They won't get far. I nodded, even though Sam couldn't see me. Good work. Keep me updated on any developments. After hanging up, I sat back in my chair, contemplating my next move. Part of me wanted to let them run, to let them taste freedom for a moment before snatching it away. But I couldn't risk it. They'd slipped through the cracks too many times already. I picked up my phone again and dialed a number I rarely used. This is Jonathan Walker, I said when the line connected. I need to call in a favor. The next few hours were a flurry of activity. I coordinated with Sam, the police, and my contacts in various government agencies. By the time the sun rose, we had cast a net so wide and tight that not even a mouse could slip through unnoticed. As I stood by the window of my office, watching the city come to life, my phone buzzed with a text from Sam. They're on the move. I allowed myself a smile. Let the final act begin. The sting operation went off without a hitch. Ryan and Sophia, thinking they were being smuggled out of the country, walked right into the arms of waiting law enforcement. The look of shock on their faces as the handcuffs clicked into place was almost comical. But the real surprise came moments later. As the police were leading them away, Ryan suddenly broke free. For a heart-stopping moment, I thought he might actually escape. But instead of running, he turned to Sophia. Sorry, babe, he sneered. Every man for himself. Before anyone could react, Ryan pulled out a hidden envelope and tossed it to the nearest officer. That's evidence of all of Sophia's illegal activities, he said. I was just an innocent pawn in her schemes. Sophia's scream of rage echoed through the airport terminal. You bastard! After everything we've been through. As they were both subdued and dragged away, I stood there watching. I felt no joy, no satisfaction, only a deep, bone-weary relief that it was finally over. Back in my office, I poured myself a drink and gazed out at the city skyline. Sophia and Ryan's betrayal of each other was the final nail in their coffin. Their desperation had driven them to turn on one another, revealing the true nature of their relationship. I thought back to the day I discovered Sophia's infidelity, how my world had shattered in an instant. The pain, the anger, the thirst for revenge that had driven me for so long all seemed so distant now. But as I stood there, I realized something. I didn't regret a single action I'd taken. Every move, every plan, every calculated risk had led to this moment. Sophia and Ryan had tried to destroy me, to take everything I'd worked for. Instead, they had only succeeded in destroying themselves. I raised my glass in a silent toast, to justice served, to lessons learned, and to the future, whatever it might hold. More than that, I had survived. I had faced betrayal, fought back against seemingly insurmountable odds, and come out stronger on the other side. Sophia and Ryan's actions had threatened to break me, but instead, they had forged me into something harder, more resilient. As I turned away from the window, my phone buzzed with a message from Amanda, sentencing hearings scheduled for next month. We've got them. I smiled, a genuine smile that felt foreign on my face after so many months of determination. It wasn't over yet, there would be appeals, hearings, more legal battles to fight. But the hard part was done. Sophia and Ryan were facing the consequences of their actions, and I was free. Free to rebuild, to grow, to look to the future without the specter of betrayal hanging over me. As I left my office that night, I felt a sense of possibility I hadn't experienced in years. Sophia and Ryan had tried to write the end of my story. Instead, they had only succeeded in closing a chapter. The rest of the book was still unwritten, and I intended to make it a bestseller. The day of reckoning had finally arrived. As I entered the courthouse, flanked by Amanda and my security detail, I could feel the weight of anticipation in the air. Reporters clamored for a statement, their cameras flashing incessantly, but I moved past them with stoic determination. This was not a day for words. It was a day for justice. The courtroom was packed to capacity, a sea of faces turning to watch as I made my way to my seat behind the prosecution. Across the aisle, Sophia and Ryan sat with their lawyers, both looking haggard and defeated. Good. They were about to learn the true cost of their betrayal. As the bailiff called the court to order, I caught Emily's eye. She gave me a small, resolute nod. We'd been through hell to get here, but we were ready. Ryan and Sophia had no idea what was about to hit them. The prosecution's opening statement was a masterpiece of legal rhetoric. They painted a vivid picture of greed, deceit, and callous disregard for the lives they'd ruined. I watched the jury's faces, seeing shock and disgust as the full extent of Sophia and Ryan's crimes was laid bare. But it was Emily's testimony that truly turned the tide. As she took the stand, I could see Ryan squirming in his seat. Emily's voice was steady as she recounted their relationship, how Ryan had systematically drained her finances and emotionally abused her before moving on to Sophia. Ryan Grant is a predator, Emily declared, her eyes never leaving the jury. He seeks out vulnerable people, gains their trust, and then bleeds them dry. I was lucky enough to escape before he completely ruined me. Sophia Walker wasn't so fortunate. I glanced at Sophia, watching the color drain from her face. It was clear she was hearing some of this for the first time. Good. Let her understand exactly who she had thrown away our marriage for. As Emily continued her testimony, providing dates, bank statements, and even recorded conversations that corroborated her claims, I could see the last vestiges of Ryan's bravado crumbling. He whispered furiously to his lawyer, who looked increasingly overwhelmed. When it came time for cross-examination, Ryan's lawyer tried to paint Emily as a scorned ex-lover out for revenge. But Emily remained unflappable, her responses measured and backed by hard evidence. By the time she stepped down from the stand, there wasn't a person in that courtroom who doubted her story. The trial continued, a parade of witnesses and experts testifying to the elaborate web of fraud and deceit Sophia and Ryan had woven. Financial records, surveillance footage, intercepted communications, the evidence was overwhelming. With each new revelation, I could see Sophia and Ryan's hopes of acquittal fading. But the real turning point came when Ryan, in a move of sheer desperation, decided to take the stand in his own defense. I leaned forward, a predatory smile playing at the corners of my mouth. This was going to be good. From the moment Ryan opened his mouth, it was clear he'd made a grave mistake. He tried to portray himself as an innocent dupe, manipulated by Sophia into participating in her schemes. But the prosecution was ready for him. They presented email after email, recording after recording, each one showcasing Ryan's active involvement in the fraud. As the evidence mounted, Ryan's cool facade began to crack. He stumbled over his words, contradicted himself, and finally, in a moment of frustration, he snapped. "You don't understand," he shouted, his face red with anger. "Do you know what it's like to always be on the outside, watching people like him?" He jabbed a finger in my direction. "Living the high life while the rest of us struggle. I deserve that money. I earned it." A hush fell over the courtroom. Ryan's lawyer buried his face in his hands. And I just sat there, my expression impassive, even as satisfaction coursed through me. Ryan had just signed his own conviction. As Ryan was led down from the stand, looking shell-shocked at his own outburst, I caught Sophia's eye. For a moment, I saw a flicker of the woman I'd once loved, scared, vulnerable, realizing the magnitude of her mistakes. But then her expression hardened, and she looked away. Whatever regrets she might have, it was far too late for them to matter. The defense's case was weak, a desperate attempt to shift blame and minimize culpability. Sophia's lawyer tried to paint her as a victim of Ryan's manipulation, but the evidence told a different story. Bank transfers, forged documents, recorded phone calls, all pointed to Sophia's willing and enthusiastic participation in the scheme. As the trial neared its end, I felt a sense of calm settle over me. We presented an ironclad case. Ryan and Sophia's guilt was beyond doubt. Now, it was just a matter of waiting for the jury to confirm what we all knew. The closing arguments were a formality. The prosecution's final statement was a masterful summation of the mountain of evidence against Ryan and Sophia. The defense, in contrast, seemed to be going through the motions, aware that they were fighting a lost cause. As the jury filed out to begin deliberations, I caught Amanda's eye. She gave me a small, confident nod. We both knew it was only a matter of time now. The wait for the verdict was mercifully short. When the jury filed back in after just a few hours of deliberation, their faces told the story before the foreman even opened his mouth. On the charge of conspiracy to commit fraud, we find the defendants, Sophia Walker and Ryan Grant, guilty. The litany of guilty verdicts continued, each one another nail in their coffins. As the full weight of their situation hit them, I saw Sophia collapse into silent sobs. Ryan just sat there, staring blankly ahead, as if he couldn't quite believe this was happening to him. As for me, I felt no joy, no elation, just a sense of satisfaction. Justice had been served. The court adjourned to await sentencing, and as I stood to leave, I allowed myself one last look at Sophia and Ryan. They had tried to destroy me, to take everything I'd worked for. Instead, they had destroyed themselves. Walking out of that courtroom, I felt lighter than I had in months. The nightmare was finally over. Sophia and Ryan would pay for their crimes, and I could finally start to rebuild my life. As the sun hit my face outside the courthouse, I took a deep breath. For the first time in a long time, the future looked bright. The weeks following the trial were a whirlwind of activity. With Sophia and Ryan's conviction, the media frenzy reached new heights. Everyone wanted a piece of the story, the inside scoop on the scandal that had rocked the business world. But I had no interest in reliving the past. It was time to look to the future. I retreated to my lake house, a secluded property I'd bought years ago as a quiet getaway. Here, surrounded by the tranquility of nature, I finally had time to process everything that had happened. As I sat on the deck, watching the sun set over the water, I found myself reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. The betrayal, the anger, the thirst for revenge, it had all consumed me for so long. But now, with justice served, I felt unburdened. Don't mistake me, I didn't regret a single action I'd taken against Sophia and Ryan. They'd made their choices, and now they were facing the consequences. But the energy I'd poured into bringing them down could now be redirected towards something more constructive. My phone buzzed with a message from Amanda. The sentencing has been scheduled for next month. I set the phone aside, not needing to respond immediately. That chapter of my life was closing. It was time to start writing the next one. Over the next few days, I reached out to people I'd neglected during the ordeal with Sophia and Ryan, old friends, family members, business associates who'd stood by me despite the scandal. It was time to rebuild those connections, to remember who I was beyond the betrayed husband seeking revenge. One call, in particular, stood out. My sister, Sarah, who I hadn't spoken to in months. Jonathan, her voice was hesitant when she answered. Is everything okay? Everything's fine, Sarah, I replied, realizing how long it had been since we'd had a real conversation. I just wanted to talk, to explain everything that's happened. There was a pause, then Sarah's voice softened. I'd like that, John. It's been too long. Over the next hour, I laid it all out for her, the betrayal, the fraud, the long road to justice. Sarah listened without judgment, offering support and understanding. By the end of the call, I felt a warmth I hadn't experienced in a long time. Family. It was something I'd almost forgotten in my single-minded pursuit of Sophia and Ryan. You know, Sarah said as we were wrapping up, I always knew you'd come out on top, John. You're too strong to let something like this break you. Her words stayed with me long after we hung up. Strong. Yes, I had been strong. I'd faced betrayal and come out victorious. But strength wasn't just about winning battles, it was about building something lasting, something meaningful. With that thought in mind, I threw myself into planning my next business venture. The scandal had shaken my company, but it had also exposed weaknesses in our systems, areas where we'd been vulnerable to fraud. There was an opportunity there, not just to rebuild, but to create something better. I spent days brainstorming, consulting with trusted advisors, sketching out plans for a new company, one that would specialize in fraud prevention and corporate security. Who better to design such systems than someone who'd experienced the devastation of fraud firsthand? As the plans took shape, I felt a renewed sense of purpose. This wasn't just about making money, it was about using my experience to help others, to prevent them from going through what I had. In the midst of this creative flurry, I received an unexpected call. It was Emily Drake. Mr. Walker, she said, her voice tentative. I hope I'm not bothering you. Not at all, Emily, I replied, genuinely pleased to hear from her. And please, call me Jonathan. After everything we've been through, I think we're beyond formalities. Emily laughed softly, and I could hear the relief in her voice. Jonathan then, she said. I wanted to thank you for everything, the trial, bringing Tyler to justice. I finally feel like I can move on with my life. As we talked, an idea began to form in my mind. Emily was smart, resilient, and she understood the importance of what I was trying to build with my new company. Emily, I said, interrupting her self-deprecating comment about job hunting, how would you feel about coming to work for me? There was a pause on the other end of the line. What? I outlined my plans for the new company, explaining how her experience and insights could be invaluable. "You've seen firsthand how these predators operate," I said. "That knowledge could help us protect a lot of people." Emily's excitement was palpable. "Jonathan, yes. Yes, I'd love to be a part of this." As I hung up, I felt a sense of satisfaction. Emily deserved a fresh start, a chance to turn her painful experience into something positive. And I knew she'd be an asset to the company. The next few weeks were a blur of activity: meetings with investors, consultations with legal teams, recruitment of key personnel. My new company, Phoenix Securities, began to take shape. The name was deliberate, rising from the ashes of betrayal and fraud to create something stronger, more resilient. As the launch date approached, I found myself working long hours, fueled by a passion I hadn't felt in years. This wasn't just about business, it was about creating a legacy, about taking the hard lessons I'd learned and using them to make a real difference. The night before the company launch, I stood in my office looking out over the city. I thought about how far I'd come, about the challenges I'd overcome. Sophia and Ryan had tried to destroy me. But they'd only made me stronger. I didn't waste time on regrets or what-ifs. The past was the past. What mattered was what I did with the future. As I looked out at the twinkling city lights, I knew that future was bright. I had weathered the storm and come out not just intact, but stronger, wiser, more determined than ever. Tomorrow, Phoenix Securities would launch, a new chapter would begin, and I was ready for whatever challenges it might bring. After all, I was Jonathan Walker. I didn't break, I rebuilt. And this time, I was building something that would last. The launch of Phoenix Securities was a resounding success. The business world, still reeling from the scandal of Sophia and Ryan's fraud, was eager for innovative solutions in corporate security. Within months, we were fielding calls from Fortune 500 companies, all looking to safeguard their assets against the kind of betrayal I'd experienced firsthand. Emily proved to be an invaluable asset, her insights helping us stay one step ahead of potential fraudsters. Watching her confidence grow as she turned her painful past into a force for good was one of the most satisfying aspects of this new venture. Life had settled into a new rhythm, one of purpose and forward momentum. The media frenzy around Sophia and Ryan's trial had died down, and I was finally able to focus entirely on the future rather than the past. Or so I thought. It was a crisp autumn morning when I received the letter. My assistant handed it to me with a puzzled look, noting that it had been screened and cleared by security. The return address was from the state penitentiary. I knew immediately who it was from, and for a long moment, I simply stared at the envelope, Sophia's neat handwriting bringing back a flood of memories. Part of me wanted to throw it away unopened. What could she possibly have to say that I needed to hear? But curiosity won out. With a sigh, I opened the letter and began to read. "Dear Jonathan," it began. "I know you probably never want to hear from me again. And I wouldn't blame you if you tore up this letter without reading it. But I had to try. I had to tell you how sorry I am. I've had a lot of time to think and hear about the choices I made, the people I hurt, especially you. I threw away something precious for a fantasy, and I'll regret that for the rest of my life. I'm not asking for forgiveness. I know I don't deserve it. I just wanted you to know that I understand now. I see the depth of my betrayal, the pain I caused, and I'm truly, deeply sorry. I hope you're doing well. I've heard about your new company. You always were brilliant at turning setbacks into opportunities. I'm glad you found success. Take care, Jonathan, and thank you for reading this if you did." I set the letter down, a complex mix of emotions swirling within me. Anger, hurt, a twinge of something that might have been nostalgia, but mostly, I felt nothing. Sophia's words, heartfelt as they might be, came far too late to have any real impact. Still, as I reread Miranda's letter, I found myself considering something I never thought I would, a visit. Not for her sake, but for my own, to look her in the eye one last time, to close this chapter of my life definitively. It took some arranging, but a week later, I found myself sitting in the sterile visitation room of the state penitentiary. When Miranda was let in, I was struck by how small she looked in her prison uniform. Gone was the confident, glamorous woman I'd married. In her place was someone broken, humbled by the consequences of her actions. "Jonathan," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I didn't think you'd come." "Neither did I replied, my voice steady. "But here we are." Miranda sat down across from me, her hands fidgeting nervously on the table between us. "Thank you," she said, "for reading my letter, for coming. I know I don't deserve." I held up a hand, cutting her off. "I'm not here for apologies or explanations, Miranda. I'm here to close a chapter, to move on completely and finally." She nodded, tears welling in her eyes. "I understand. I needed you to know how sorry I am for everything." I looked at her, really looked at her for the first time since the trial. The woman I'd loved, the woman who'd betrayed me so completely, was gone. In her place was someone I barely recognized. "I believe you're sorry, Miranda," I said finally, "but it doesn't change anything. You made your choices. Now we both have to live with the consequences." She nodded, wiping away a tear. "I know. I hope someday you can find it in your heart to forgive me." I stood up, ready to leave. "Forgiveness isn't something you're owed, Miranda. It's something you earn, and you've got a long way to go." As I turned to leave, Miranda called out, her voice urgent. "Jonathan, wait. There's something else you need to know." I paused, looking back at her. "What is it?" Miranda took a deep breath, as if steeling herself. "It's about Amanda, your lawyer." I felt a chill run down my spine. "What about Amanda?" I asked, my voice sharp. Miranda's eyes met mine, filled with a mixture of guilt and resolve. She was working with Tyler all along, feeding him information, helping him stay one step ahead. She played both sides, Jonathan. For a moment, I stood there, stunned. Amanda had been my rock throughout this ordeal, my trusted ally. The implications of what Miranda was saying were staggering. "Why should I believe you?" I demanded, my mind racing. Miranda sighed. "Because I have nothing left to lose, and because you deserve to know the truth. Check her communications with Tyler. You'll find the proof." I left the prison in a daze, Miranda's words echoing in my head. Part of me wanted to dismiss her revelation as a final, desperate attempt to sow chaos. But I couldn't shake the nagging feeling that there might be truth to her words. As soon as I got back to my office, I called Sam. "I need you to dig into Amanda's communications with Tyler Grant. Anything and everything you can find." Sam, ever reliable, didn't ask questions. "On it, boss. I'll have something for you soon." The next 48 hours were tense. I went through the motions of running my company, but my mind was elsewhere. Had I been played again? Had Amanda, someone I trusted implicitly, been manipulating me all along? When Sam finally called back, I could tell from his tone that something significant had surfaced. "You're going to want to see this, Jonathan." The evidence was irrefutable. Emails, text messages, even recorded phone calls. Amanda had indeed been feeding information to Tyler, playing both sides of the conflict. She had manipulated events, ensuring that no matter who came out on top, she would benefit. I sat in my office, staring at the evidence before me, a cold anger settling in my chest. Once again, I had been betrayed by someone I trusted, but this time I wasn't caught off guard. This time, I was ready. I called Amanda to my office, watching her closely as she entered. She smiled, the picture of professional confidence. "What can I do for you, Jonathan?" Without a word, I turned my computer screen toward her, displaying one of her emails to Tyler. I watched as the color drained from her face. "Jonathan, I can explain," she began, but I cut her off. "Save it, Amanda. I trusted you. I defended you. And all along, you were just another snake in the grass." Amanda's demeanor changed instantly, her mask of friendliness falling away. "You have no idea what it's like," she hissed, "always being the one behind the scenes, never getting the recognition. I deserve more." I stood up, my voice cold. "What you deserve is a prison cell next to Miranda and Tyler. And that's exactly what you're going to get." As security escorted Amanda out, I felt a strange sense of closure. The final piece of the puzzle had fallen into place. The betrayal that had upended my life was finally, truly over. In the days that followed, I threw myself into my work with renewed vigor. Phoenix Securities expanded rapidly, our reputation for integrity and effectiveness growing with each successful contract. Emily continued to excel, her insights proving invaluable time and time again. As for me, I found myself changed by the experience. Harder in some ways, yes, but also more aware of the value of true loyalty. I had been betrayed, but I had also found unexpected allies, Sam, Emily, and the employees who stood by me through the scandal. These were the people who truly mattered. I never saw Miranda again after that last prison visit. I heard that she was making efforts to turn her life around, participating in rehabilitation programs and using her financial skills to help other inmates. Good for her, I thought, but it changed nothing between us. Tyler, I learned, was not faring as well. His arrogance had made him enemies, even in prison. The last I heard, he was spending most of his time in solitary confinement for his own protection, a fitting end for a man who thought he could manipulate everyone around him. As for Amanda, her trial was swift and decisive. The evidence against her was overwhelming, and she lacked the charisma to sway a jury as she had once swayed clients. She would be spending the next decade, at least, behind bars. One evening, standing in my office and looking out over the city I had once again conquered, I allowed myself a moment of reflection. The past few years had been a crucible, burning away everything that was weak or false in my life. What remained was stronger, purer, more resilient. I had faced betrayal, deceit, and manipulation from all sides. I had been brought to the brink of ruin, but I hadn't just survived, I had thrived. I had taken the lessons learned from my enemies and used them to build something greater than ever before. As I turned away from the window, my eyes fell on a framed photo on my desk. It was a picture from the launch of Phoenix Securities, showing me surrounded by my team, Sam, Emily, and the others who had stood by me through it all. These were the people I could trust, the ones who had proven their loyalty. I smiled, a genuine smile that reached my eyes. The past was behind me now. Truly and finally, the future stretched out before me, full of possibilities. I was Jonathan Walker, and I had emerged from the fire, not just unscathed, but tempered and strengthened. Whatever challenges lay ahead, I was ready for them. After all, what could the world throw at me that I hadn't already overcome? Thanks for watching, like and subscribe to the channel to watch my next videos and share with me your opinion, what you would do in my place.